Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. It's a really busy weekend of racing. There's stakes races all over the place. Tampa Bay Downs wants to join the stakes party. So let's head on over there as we'll preview a couple stakes races on the Saturday card. The first of them is the Grade 3 Endeavor. That's going to go as race number 6 on Saturday over at Tampa Bay Downs. Here's the field. Gino, Buccola, David, Aragona. We'll get you all set up for this one. David, some of the major players in here, I thought a pretty evenly matched group, but you look to a horse like See You Around, who's kind of a new face, lightly raced in the country for Christophe Clement. Breath Away has kind of been a mainstay in spots sort of like this, pretty consistent. You have horse like Ocean Club, who's a graded stakes winner. You have Venetia, who's coming off of a nice win. I thought there are a lot of different ways you might be able to go in here.
Yeah, this definitely feels like the more wide open of the two graded stakes on turf this Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. And it's going to be interesting to see where the bettors really go in this one. I was looking at the Twitter feed of the morning line maker, Mark Luther, and he put out that he was making Saffron Moon the morning line favorite in this race. I think a fairly lukewarm one. And I get it. She's going out for the ever dangerous Chad Brown Bard and is attracting Flavien Prat, who's going to be at Tampa on Saturday. So connections like that typically do move the board.
Yeah, she's a 6-year-old and she's only raced 9 times. So she's kind of been her own worst enemy, just not being able to stay on the track. Every time she shows up, it's been pretty solid, just a lot of gaps in the running line. So we'll see if she's ready to rock and roll on Saturday. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector and see what they think up front. So they have Infinite Diamond, Libin pushing the pace, Ocean Club. That's no surprise. All of them like to be forward, like to probably at least hold their position in some of these longer route races. So I think it could be at least a fair and honest pace here early.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive some of the jockeys that are drawn in the outside post positions are, particularly the number 9 Ocean Club, who has shown the ability to go gate to wire against Stakes Company before, and especially the number 10 Damaso, who feels like her best chance might be to go to the front and try to back down the pace. I don't know if that's going to be possible in this field with some faster horses drawn to the inside, but she's one of the keys to how fast they go in the early stages.
You have to always handicap intent a little bit also when you have a horse like that who has some speed, who's drawn way towards the outside. That's really their best chance of winning. Maybe you want to project or expect them to get a little more aggressive than it would look like on the pace projector here. Let's meet the field for the Grade 3 Endeavor, and we'll start from the inside, David, with See You Around. We're taking a look at the most recent start. This was a good one. This is the Tropical Park Oaks, and this is a win on December the 14th. This was her second start in the U.S. She was Group 3 placed. She was only beat about a length and 3/4 in a Group 1 over in France before coming over. So we know she has a little bit of back class, and she took a nice step forward in her second start in the U.S. there, getting that victory.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical of how she would stack up against some of these U.S. horses because I think the group of French 3-year-old fillies that we saw competing last year overseas was not the strongest one. So I don't know how much credit I'm supposed to give her for that Group 1 finish in the French 1000 Guineas at Longchamp. But after needing her U.S. debut in the Pebbles, she really did take a step forward in that replay that we took a look at. The one caveat is that she got such a good trip in that race because she was just sitting in the pocket every step of the way behind the leader In Our Time, who ultimately settled for second. I guess you could say that In Our Time flattered the result when she came back and finished a very good third in the Pegasus World Cup filly and mare turf last weekend, improving her buyer up to a 96. I still want to see You Around make that same improvement, though, before I consider her one of the top contenders in this race.
Yeah, I don't really knock that last effort. It was good, but as you were pointing out, it was such a perfect trip. And I feel like this horse is going to get bet a little bit because she is sort of a new face that people could gravitate towards. And I think whatever her price is, it just might be a little bit shorter than her actual chances of winning the race. So not that I would be surprised to see her win, but I think I like others more at the prospect of value they could offer in here. David, we move to Infinite Diamond, who's going to make the third start of the form cycle. She was a 24-1 winner last time out. She's a stakes winner on the dirt. She's best when she's forwardly placed in here. Just kind of going through her form, though, it really seems like she only has like that one race or so that would compete with a lot of the top runners in here based on speed figures. Can you make a case for her with this group?
If she's hinted on a few occasions that she might possess this kind of ability, I could go all the way back to her Honey Fox in the early part of 2024, where she really wasn't beaten that far by eventual Grade 1 winner Chili Flag and was sort of setting or chasing a pace that day that fell apart at the end. So that was the best effort of her career, but she got back to a pretty good performance last time when she did cause that 24-1 upset. She got a pretty good trip that day, just stalking a horse that ran off on the front end, another long shot that was forward and was able to pull away late. But when you win by nearly 3 lengths on the turf at Gulfstream, that's a pretty decisive result. She's facing tougher here, but maybe she's back in good form for Patrick Buccola.
Be My Sunshine will make her second start back after a 5-month break. She was actually the runner-up in this race last year. And when you look at the Swanee River that she's exiting, that race now is a little bit stronger because the winner of that race was Be Your Best, who just came back to win the Pegasus World Cup filly and mare turf. So when you look at the overall form, you can kind of make a case that Be Your Sunshine might have needed that last start with the break in between races. She got bumped at the start. She was back to 8th of 10. And she comes moving late. There was a blanket finish in that race, David, and the horses who finished between 2nd and 7th were separated by maybe a length at most. And a lot of times when you're handicapping races, you see a horse that finishes 2nd or 3rd, you kind of think positively of them. You see a horse that finishes 5th or 6th, sometimes the dynamic or the way that you feel about them is different. But when you go back and watch the races and you see they really weren't separated by all that much there. So I think she'll need to improve a little bit. She's now a 5-year-old mare, but I could expect her to maybe take a step forward with that second start off the bench now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a few trips coming out of that Swanee River, as I think 3 horses are exiting that race coming into the Endeavor. Be My Sunshine had not the best trip of the 3 and certainly not the worst trip of the 3. So I think she ran okay coming off the layoff that day. And you go back to her Endeavor last year where she finished 2nd to Walkathon. You could argue this is a deeper spot than that one was, but that was still a good performance. And she was really on an upward trajectory coming into that race. And she's kind of been up and down since then, but you start to take apart her form. She got rained off the turf at Saratoga this summer, caught a couple of less than firm turf courses at Churchill prior to that, which can sometimes be a course that not every horse loves. So I can make a few excuses for her, and maybe she's ready to take that step forward now, second off the layoff.
Saffron Moon, obviously a really talented mare. She's now a 6-year-old, but she only has 9 starts, and she only made 1 start in all of 2024. So after 10 months off, then she comes back and she races, David. Then she has another 3 months off, which you never think that's a positive. You always want to see horses coming off their wins, try to string them together. But we know she has a pretty high ceiling, and it's rare that she shows up and doesn't give a pretty good account of herself. She has kind of some versatility to her as well. She was way farther back last time out than she had been previously, where she showed a little bit more tactical speed in those prior races. But you get Flavian Pratt showing up at Tampa to have live mounts in a couple of these graded stakes races on Saturday. I mean, she certainly is one of the top contenders in here. For me, it's just how short do you want to take on a horse like this that's probably pretty hard to trust?
Yeah, I mean, for her, I guess this 3.5-month layoff is nothing because she's been laid up for 6 months or more on 4 different occasions throughout her career. So it's just been hard to get any momentum going. I mean, she won that turf debut back in April of 2022 at Keeneland. Like she was going to be Chad Brown's next turf star. I mean, she won a turf race by 8 lengths getting on the surface for the first time, just looking like she had all the potential in the world. And now it's almost 3 years later, and she's still searching for her first stakes victory. She's only even tried Stakes Company once. That was over a year ago in the Cardinal, where she was 10 lengths behind Star Fortress. And here we're taking a look at her most recent start from October at Keeneland. A little hard to spot. She's in that the white silks with a white cap trying to come through between the horses currently in 2nd and 3rd. She'll be highlighted right here. I mean, kind of hard to believe when you're watching this replay that she only loses by half a length by the time they get to the wire, because she really never looked like she was in position to be effective here. It's really kicked on when she finally saw some daylight at the end. Clearly, there's turf ability here. She's just not been able to put those races together and start to build upon the form that she's already put out there. She's going to be a pretty short price, I think, going out for Chad Brown and Pratt. So just wasn't sure she was going to offer value in this race.
I know producer Bobby has Berlin on in the background over and over as we get set to talk about this next one. Breathaway, who comes off of a pretty tough trip last time out, David, you were pointing out was a common race in the Swanee River. And Breathaway was the number 11 that day, drew post 9, and just had no chance trying to get over from the outside. This horse was parked wide all the way around. Honestly, top of the lane, I kept expecting her to even back up more and to just kind of stop and throw the towel in. But she really did get game and try hard to dig in and fight with these horses who had much more beneficial trips than she did. I mean, she was just giving up ground all the way around the track last time out.
Yeah, and she only lost that race by a length and a half. And I would say that she had more than a length and a half of adversity in terms of losing ground around the turns, as you pointed out. And it wasn't just that she was wide, but she was 4 wide with no cover at all around that clubhouse turn. And that is just a trip that doesn't work on turf in general, but really doesn't seem to work at Gulfstream Park. So the fact that she was able to only lose that race by 2 lengths after overcoming all of that, both turns, losing ground, she ran really well that day. I think you take a look at who she was facing on that occasion. As you mentioned, Be Your Best, horse that came back to win the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf. At Papilio, who was second. I know she didn't run her best race in the Pegasus, but she's a really nice horse as well. So you could argue that this is really not a tougher spot at all. Arguably, it's lateral move or even slight class relief coming into this race for Breath Away. And she's just been in very good form over her past several starts. I know that she doesn't win all the time. She's only 3 for 13, but she's had some unlucky trips recently. And I think she fits really well against this field.
Yeah, it all comes down to price with her too. She may be a horse that can kind of float up a little bit if some of the others maybe get a little more support and action, like right next door, Saffron Moon. And then even on the outside, Venetia is in very nice form right now. Venetia actually got the better of Breath Away on November the 10th when they last raced. And Venetia was actually last of 8 that day, came really widest of all in the 5-6 path. It was extremely impressive to run down Breath Away in that race. But wins that one and then goes to the bench for a few months, shows back up here now as a stakes winner, and she's improved in speed figures in all 5 U.S. starts so far. So she feels like she's heading in the right direction, David.
Yeah, let's take a look at the stretch run of that Forever Together, where Venetia makes that big move from the back of the pack, as you accurately described. I mean, she swung so wide, and Breath Away maybe had to move a little too soon. Breath Away's the horse in the green cap that's about to strike the front right now, but she got a pretty good trip all in all, certainly a better trip than she got next time in the Sewanee River. But Venetia, when she is able to get into the clear and unleash this stretch bid, she is pretty tough to hold off. The problem for Venetia, Gino, is that she just so rarely is able to get out of the gate cleanly, and she always leaves herself with so much ground to make up. And in a 10-horse field like this, she's going to have to overcome traffic, and she's going to need pace to close into. So Venetia is a very trip-dependent horse, but when she gets that trip, she's dangerous.
Yeah, and in an evenly matched group too, where you want to be efficient. You don't want to be giving up lengths here, or don't want to be giving up positioning here and there. And sometimes she's just kind of at the mercy of racing luck after those poor beginnings. So certainly a horse that they'll all have to hold off. We'll see if she can get out of the gate a little bit better here. Libin, just 1 for 9 in 2024. David has not raced since October the 6th. And last time we saw her, she was basically eased when she was in the Beldame against Raging Sea and some of the top older Filly and Mare dirt runners. Her speed figs did improve when she moved to the grass, though. And if you're just looking at her 3 races on the grass, they're actually pretty good, and they're not far off what this field would take to win a race like this in speed figures. But the lone win did come at Lone Star, so I'm kind of questioning the company there, and I feel like I need to see one from her with some better form before I can include her in a spot like this.
Yeah, I mean, just glance at her PPs. She looks a little bit interesting given those improved speed figures on the turf. And then you start to take apart those turf races, and she didn't face the toughest company at Lone Star. And I mean, I know she wasn't exactly favored when she won the Lone Grass race from the Wasted Tears, but that was only because the bettors made Hoosier Filly the favorite in her turf debut, and she did not handle the turf at all. And when you take that one out of the race, Libin probably would have been 3 to 5 in that spot. And she won like a horse that, was that dominant over the field, but she couldn't really hang with some tougher foes next time in the Beverly D, and her form really fell apart at the end of last season. Kind of looked to me like maybe she bled last time in the Beldame, the way she just pulled up so quickly. And when you start to look at all of her form, her 5 races without Lasix, she's been off the board every time, and now she's not racing without Lasix here at another graded stake. So I just kind of wonder if we're going to see her best effort this time.
We move to the number 8, Austere. David, you and I have been doing a lot of previews recently, and she kind of reminds me, her form, of a horse that you liked last weekend at Gulfstream Park, Jody's Pride, who actually ran really, really well, where you have this horse who was kind of precocious, who had this good form early at 2, and then just has some gaps where she's missed some time. And I think her speed figures might be a little bit better, or I think she might be a little bit better than her speed figures. I think she just might be a little bit faster than that. Coming off of a couple wins early to start her career, she goes to the Breeders' Cup, and she's just in a little bit too tough that day. She does not run all that poorly. She's off for a little while. She shows back up in the Florida Oaks. It looks like a nice starting point for her when she's only beaten a length and 3/4 that day. Then she's thrown into the Appalachian, and she's only 9 to 2, has a little bit of traffic, but I think something goes wrong because she's off from April. all the way till November when she shows back up at Fairgrounds. And I thought she was visually pretty impressive in her return to the races at Fairgrounds. Going through her form overall, she's going to have to get a little faster. And I'm not exactly sure who she's beat along the way, but I do think this is a horse with some real ability, David. And when you have some gaps like that, sometimes you can project improvement in the speed figures. I feel like she might be a little bit faster than those ones that she's run. What do you think about Austere in here?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that analysis, and I just wasn't quite sure where to place her in this race because, as you said, she does need to improve from a speed figure standpoint. But I agree, she was visually impressive last time. She did work out a pretty good trip, but once she got into the clear, she settled that race in maybe a 16th of a mile, the way that she just blew past the leaders and drew off to an easy score. This is a much tougher spot than the allowance yield that she beat at Fairgrounds last time. But as you said, we might not have seen the best of her yet. She still does have upside. So I want to see what kind of price she is in this race.
Grade 3 winner Ocean Club has some tactical speed. We can see her on the front end. She's also shown the ability to sit off a little bit. She wins the Grade 3 Noble Damsel a couple starts back. Then she was down on the inside behind the leaders last time out. A little bit of a tight spot, but she did get a nice opening, and she really did have every opportunity early on in the stretch when she moved up to second. She just got outfinished for third, and she was in that common race with Be Your Best, who came back to win the Filly and Mare Turf. Where do you think she fits with this group?
Yeah, I mean, she's just barely edged out Breathaway in each of her last two starts. The Noble Damsel, where she beat Breathaway by a couple of heads, and then the Suwannee River last time, where they basically hit the wire together. I thought Breathaway ran better both times, especially last time in the Suwannee River, where, as you said, Ocean Club just got to save ground and really did all in all get a pretty good trip. And now drawn out in post 9 with some other speed to her inside, I kind of wonder if that same trip is going to be available to her here. So she's in good form right now. She's very consistent. I just preferred others.
Yep, completely agree. Damaso rounds out the field. Stakes placed. Pace factor stepping up a little bit with the wide draw. We were talking about her during the pace projector. She's kind of a key to the race and maybe a wild card because her best chances have to be if she's forwardly placed. But if they try to use that speed, she really could get a wide trip or maybe have to be used up a little too much early.
Yeah, it just feels like this is a tough level for her because she's been competitive in some lower level stakes races, some high level optional claimers over the past couple of seasons. But last time she was beaten by a nice horse in Ozara, who maybe had a setback for the reason she's not in here because she might have been a contender in a race like this. But Damaso really had everything her own way on the front end, got to back down the pace, had an advantage at the top of the stretch and still got run down by that foe. And now drawn in post 10, just feels like she's going to have a tougher trip against the tougher field.
There's your field for the Grade 3 Endeavor Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Let's take a look at selections for this one. David, you're going to go to Breathaway right on top, so hopefully you're going to be singing after this race.
Yeah, let's hope that she gets a better trip than she did last time in the Suwannee River. And I think it's going to be, she'll be able to do so from post 5 here as opposed to being drawn out in a wide draw last time. If Hector Diaz can kind of save a little ground around the turns, I do think that she's shown the quality to beat a field like this. So just hoping for a little racing luck for Breathaway. And I also want to use a little bit of the number 3, Be My Sunshine, who didn't have the best trip in the Suwannee River last time and maybe can move forward second off the layoff.
5, 3, 6, 8 for David. I'll put Austere on top. Filly that I've been following for a while, thinking she might be a little bit better than those speed figures. What I'm looking for in this race for sure, and I think we both kind of are, some value because it feels like a pretty competitive race where there's a lot of ways to go. So just demand a little value, whichever direction you go. We wish you the best of luck on Saturday in the Grade 3 Endeavor at Tampa Bay Downs.